Pool and thunder, someone's in my house. I'm a 32-year-old female and live with my mother in a very rural area. My house is surrounded on all sides by miles of thick forest, with our driveway as the only open area leading out to the main road. Our closest neighbours on both sides are family members, and you can't see our house from the road, so I've never really felt the need to keep the doors closed or even get fully dressed before walking outside. At least, I haven't since our crazy neighbours moved away, but that's another story. No pants runs out to the storage shed are common, and I usually think nothing of leaving both the front and back doors open. During the day, it just feels very safe. This has changed recently. It gets really hot in my part of the country. Over 100 degrees Fahrenheit isn't uncommon in the summer. We recently got a pool in the backyard. Unfortunately, I've been taking a medicine which causes my skin to blister if I get in direct sunlight, and the pool sits right where the sun hits it from the sunrise until about 3 hours before sunset. That was my time to swim. For the first couple of days, I didn't feel anything but bliss as I swam, and I would be in there until well after dark. About 3 days in, I started feeling a little nervous about staying in the pool after my mother got out, or about going in without her. She usually went with me because I'd been sick and she was afraid with all the medication I was taking that I might pass out and drown. There was no logical reason why I felt uneasy. It was my own backyard and no one can see me behind the house, not to mention I have 2 yappy dogs who bark when they so much as think there might be a stranger around. The last time I felt so unnerved, I'd been walking in the woods behind the house and realised I was being stalked by a mountain lion. It was my danger sense telling me something wasn't right, but I kept rationalising it away. A week goes by and I stop staying out after dark. By the time the sun goes down, I'm always inside, so here's where it finally dawned on me that a person's danger sense is called that for a reason. It had only been about 20 minutes since my mother got out, and I had done a couple of laps back and forth, but was tiring kind of early. So I stopped swimming and just kind of bobbed in the water with my head tilted back, looking at the fluffy white clouds in a clear blue sky. It was really peaceful and relaxing. Had I been floating with my ears underwater, I probably wouldn't have heard it. A soft crackling sound, like dry leaves being crunched underfoot. I shot upright and looked around but saw nothing. I figured it was the dogs, so I swam to the side of the pool where I thought it came from, pulled myself up and looked over the edge, with a smile on my face and the dogs' names on my lips. There was nothing there. Confused, I swam around the entire pool looking over the edge for the dogs, but nothing. I'd mostly convinced myself it was a squirrel, and was relaxing back into the water when I heard it again. Soft crunching of leaves followed by a snap of a twig. It was coming from the tree line. Again, I called for the dogs, since they love running in the woods. Complete silence. I ducked back into the water beneath the edge of the pool and waited. Less than a minute later I heard snap, 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 very clearly from the trees directly across from me. I poked my head up and stared intently in that direction. The sound stopped. I continued staring. Unfortunately, I'm nearsighted and obviously didn't bring my glasses into the pool. All I could see was blurry green and brown from the trees. I ducked back down and did a lap, then paused next to the ladder. Snap, 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 snap. This is the point at which I noped out of there as fast as my waterlogged body could go. Up the ladder, grabbed the towel and shoes and into the house. I told my mother what I'd heard, but much like me, she assumed it was the dogs because they were outside at the time. I told her it couldn't be 2 young Jack Russell Terriers. They couldn't make soft, slow-walking sounds if their lives depended on it, and they definitely would have come running when I called them. My thought was that it was a mountain lion prowling around, and that I should go back out for the rest of the day to give it time to clear off. I hopped in the shower to wash off the chlorine, and had pretty much put it out of my mind when I realised something terrifying. The footsteps were actually familiar, but I didn't place where I'd heard them until that moment. They weren't the steps of a 4-legged animal. They were more like something I'd make when I used to go hiking back there. Those were human footsteps. I finished my shower as calmly as possible and then told my mother my deduction, but she still didn't believe me. Later, my cousin brought my dogs home. Turns out they'd been playing with his dogs in the yard for most of the day, definitely not in the woods. If this were the end of it, I'd probably not have posted here. 2 days later, we had some terrible storms roll through. Little rain, but wind that took down trees and thunder that shook the house. From the first boom, I was wide awake, laying in my bed and hoping it would be over soon. After about half an hour, the power went out. Without electricity and all the background noise that no one ever thinks about, it was eerily silent, except for the constant loud rumbles and booms of thunder. Finally, not able to go back to sleep, I got up to find a lantern and visit the bathroom. I took one step out of the room and froze. The rumbling I'd heard wasn't just thunder. Someone was standing on the back stairs and pulling at the back door. The door may look like a standard wooden exterior door, but it's actually steel. The rumbling was the metal door rattling in its metal frame, sounding much like the rumbles of the thunder. The layout of the house is basically my bedroom on the very end, the bathroom just next to my bedroom, then the back door in the hall leading to the kitchen. I was literally feet away from whoever desperately wanted in my house. I stood frozen in place, my body gone cold and shaking. After a few more minutes of rattling, it stopped, and I heard what sounded like angry footsteps go down the stairs and head not towards the road, but in the woods. I went back to bed and hid under the covers like a scared little kid until morning. You might ask, why didn't you wake your mother? Why didn't the dogs bark? Why didn't you call the cops? Well, the power was out and I knew the cell phone wasn't charged, so calling the cops was out. My mother couldn't have done anything and has a bad track record with not listening to me about dangerous situations. So frankly, I didn't trust her not to cause an even worse situation by going outside to prove to me that no one was there. As for the dogs, they are scared of nothing except thunder. They were hiding under the couch, where they always go when it's raining. This is still not the end. For nearly 2 weeks nothing else happened. I didn't go back into the pool and I made sure the doors were locked at night, but everything generally went back to normal. One day I'd just gotten up and headed for a shower. Both front and back doors were open, but my mother was sitting in the living room with both dogs. I did not feel the least bit unsafe taking a shower with the bathroom door closed but unlocked. About halfway through the shower I heard a loud thump from inside the room. My first thought was that the towels had fallen off the counter. I pulled back the curtain to check, but they were right where I'd put them. Then I'd noticed that the bathroom door was cracked open. Someone had opened the door only to hit the trash can I'd placed over the floor vent right in front of the door, so it wouldn't blow on me in the shower. I assumed it was my mother and went back to the shower. If she really needed in, she'd have just pushed the can out of the way. When I got out, I headed to the living room to find neither mother nor dog anywhere in sight. Alright, maybe she'd opened the door to tell me she was going somewhere and I just hadn't heard her. About that time, she walked in with the dogs and the mail in hand. I asked her what she'd wanted and she told me that she'd just left after I got in the shower. She'd walked down to the mailbox and the dogs had followed her. I really didn't want to scare her or be disbelieved again, so I told her I thought I'd heard her say something and left it at that. It was definitely not her that opened the door. I figured whoever it was, they were trying to be sneaky and thought I'd be alerted to an intruder when they caused the noise, so they fled. That was 3 days ago. I have still not called the police because I have absolutely no proof no one has experienced anything but me, and even though I am most certainly not an overdramatic attention-seeking liar, I've been painted as one in the past due to certain mental and anxiety issues. Even if I contacted the police, I'm sure I'd just get the "there's nothing we can do" treatment. As for the footsteps in the woods, I have pretty much decided that this person does not know my eyesight is as bad as it is. The footsteps stopped when I stared in the direction because they thought that I had seen them. When I ducked back down, they decided I hadn't and probably thought I was floating with my ears submerged and couldn't hear clearly. Update. This evening my aunt called the police and someone was taken away by them. I wasn't there at the time, so I don't know what it was about, but she lives right next door to me. It's too late right now, but I'll ask her what happened tomorrow and let everyone here know what I find out. Update. Okay, here's what I know. My aunt came home from work and found the gate to the road that leads back to the woods open, with the lock broken. The road is on her land, but is mostly used by a quarry that's on the other side of the woods. She started down the road to investigate when she heard several gunshots from the woods. Being the smart lady she is, she called the police. When they arrived, they found a man in his late teens or early 20s in the quarry. He had shut up the supervisor's trailer and loaded several pieces of equipment onto his ATV. He was arrested, and the supervisor told my aunt they had dealt with him before. He'd been underage the first couple of times he'd caused problems, and they'd gotten their stolen items back, but so they'd let it go. This time they're not going to, and he is definitely going to jail. Apparently he'd also been stealing out of my aunt's storage, destroying the fences around the property line and generally being a nuisance. I think if this is the man who's been in my house, he may have come in to rob us and not realise I was still inside. Thinking back, I don't know for sure that he ever saw my mother and I together. He may have thought only one woman lived here, and when my mother left to get the mail, he thought the house was empty. Hearing the shower running may have confused him, so he opened the door to check instead of immediately heading for what he wanted to steal. He's been wandering around on our property, stealing and causing trouble for at least 3 years without us ever knowing it. I think he just got overconfident and careless and finally got caught. I am really hoping this is the case and there isn't another creeper hanging around in the middle of nowhere looking to do more than steal things. The only thing left unexplained is, what was he doing that night during the storm, pulling on our back door? Testing if he could get in? It was the middle of the night and both vehicles were in the front yard. He had to know that we were home. If anything else happens, I'll update again, but I'm going to say that this is the end of it, I hope.